الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد MashaAllah, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. It is a great honor and a great privilege to be with you on this Wednesday evening. Of course, this is the monthly hangout. You know, we were doing them bi-weekly, but it looks like we're going to be doing a book club now. MashaAllah, we're introducing the ALIM book club. Looking forward to our first meeting. So we're now reducing the hangouts to just one a month, but for that one hangout monthly, we do want to try to select, interesting guests that will prove, engaging in conversation and will bring, perspectives that will be mutually enriching, not only for myself, but for everyone who, manages to tune in for these hangouts and conversations. This week, we are on with soon-to-be Dr. Shaakira Abdullah. A noted sexpert, quoting from her bio, working in the New Jersey area. Dr. Shaakira, it's an honor to have you. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah, I'm well. And how was your husband?
He's good.
Alhamdulillah. How's the family?
Everyone's good. Alhamdulillah, everyone's good.
Alhamdulillah, excellent. Are you still based in New Jersey?
No, I'm actually in Delaware now. I do a lot in Jersey, but I'm in Delaware now. So more like the tri-state area in Philly and Delaware.
Okay, mashallah. So I read your background and it's clear that you're very accomplished. You have a lot going. You're currently pursuing a PhD at Widener University. Explain to us a little bit about, your focus, your interests, what you're researching, and some of the work that you've been doing.
Okay, so I am a doctor now.
Oh, not soon to be doctor, Dr. Shaakira Abdullah. The bio actually said you were in the process of receiving your doctorate.
So I have a doctorate in nursing, and I'm getting a doctorate in human sexuality as well.
Okay, so you're a doctor, and you're trying to become a double doctor. Doctor. Alhamdulillah. Forgive me for not addressing you with all of your proper the first time. MashaAllah. So Dr. Shaakira, tell us, what you've been up to, what are you doing, what are you working on, why this interests you so much?
So alhamdulillah. So I started off with this organization called Love Beyond Love. So when I was getting my doctorate in nursing, I did this study in a masjid called Sex Education in the Mosque. And basically what it was I did a study with Muslim girls where I did a sex education curriculum infused with Quran and Sunnah, and it worked. So it got all this different attention, and that's what pushed me to start this organization called Love Beyond Love. So Love Beyond Love is a nonprofit organization where we provide sex education to Muslim youth from an Islamic perspective. So a lot of it has to do with not only abstinence, but marriage prep. So preparing for life after marriage, body positivity, loving themselves, learning about their bodies, learning about their spouse's bodies. So positive sex, how Islam is such a sex positive religion, and learning about that and taking the taboo-ness out of it. And then in addition, so from doing a whole bunch of different youth workshops, a lot of the youth were saying, I can't talk to anyone about this except you. Like, I can't talk to my parents about this.
Sure.
I have no one else. And I was like, well, it's only one of me. So I need to do something where I can educate parents about this. So that's where the Halal Sex Talks came in to focus on parents. So I do online courses for parents to teach them how to have these open and honest discussions with their Muslim children about sexuality.
Okay, mashallah, that's tremendous. And listening to the work that you're doing, I am not, attempting to flatter you when I say that I think you're reviving a very important element of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. You're a muhyi Sunnah. You're reviving the Sunnah because, as you mentioned, Islam is a very sex positive religion, and this is perhaps one of the greatest distinctions of Islam among the Abrahamic religions. that Islam does not view carnal passion or bodily pleasure as some devilish irritant to be removed from people, but rather something that should be enjoyed and indulged and engaged responsibly. So my first question is, what do you think? I mean, like, okay, this what we're talking about now is kind of like upon our scriptural foundations. It's clear the Prophet, peace be upon him, spoke very openly about sex, spoke very openly about enjoying sex, encouraging other people to enjoy sex, even mentioning at one point that one gets a good deed for conjugal relations with their spouse, etc. How did we become such a sex negative, prudish community that we are embarrassed by the very mention of anything sexual? How do we get to that point?
A lot of it has to do with colonization. So the history of being colonized by the English and them kind of having this taboo, like it's super private, it's dirty, sex is a dirty thing that if you do it, then you do it in private, don't talk about it. Where the Prophet Muhammad there's a ton of hadiths about him and talking to his companions about pleasing their wives and how he pleased his wives and how he was not what's the word I'm looking for?
Prudish or
he had a good balance where he wasn't out in the open, whatever. He was still private about it, but it wasn't this taboo, don't talk about it, hush hush type of thing where we kind of adopted in our Islamic culture.
So and I think more than just kind of a feature of some of our cultures, because if we're talking about it like it's this kind of innocuous feature of some Muslim cultures, that would be one thing, but it's actually quite harmful. It can be quite dangerous that people enter sometimes marriages, right? Have you found this? And they know very little. They haven't been prepared at all. They know very little about their own bodies, and they certainly have received no instruction about engaging in a physical relationship with anybody else.
Exactly.
And if those first experiences are just by virtue of a first experience being a first experience, I suppose we can expect it to be a little uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
But if it's that regular discomfort on top of not having any idea what's going on, what to expect, what I'm experiencing, what the other person is experiencing, I'd imagine that could really really be like traumatic in a way.
Because especially it's a double standard between males and females. So I educated both sexes, and it's interesting with the girls. It's kind of like I was told to keep my modesty and be modest and maintain my virginity until I get married, and I'm so close to this. And now it's my wedding night, and the night before I got married, and now I'm having this henna party, and my aunties and my grandmas are throwing lingerie at me, and they're trying to tell me, how I, especially for my husband, and just kind of like this flip. And it's like, where did this come from? You never talked to me about sex. You never talked to me about, how I should please my husband, and how I should, how we should engage and communicate and have a healthy conversation about how we want to engage. So it goes from nothing, so from 0 to 100, and overnight.
Quicker than Drake.
And for the males, it's kind of like a double standard where we really honor our girls and really hold and shelter our girls, but with our boys, even in the Muslim community, I noticed that even their fathers are kind of like, oh, I gotta talk to you, have this talk to you about sex, the conversation, and my man, you got a girlfriend, stuff like that, and it's kind of like a cool thing. And we don't,
unfortunately,
we have to, honor our boys and remind them that, you should honor yourself, and you're a man when you, protect your modesty and protect your virginity as well. And we have to hold them to that same standard. Because who are our girls marrying then? They're marrying
one of the biggest, to my mind, one of the biggest contradictions of terms in the Muslim community is that we treat modesty as though it's a feminine virtue.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many speeches, lectures, khutbahs, where whenever modesty is mentioned, something about women or women's clothing or women's bodies follows that, as though modesty is not a human virtue. And that, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was mentioned as being the most modest of people. And he mentioned that modesty is a branch of faith. But it seems like we don't give our boys enough incentive to be modest with regard to how they carry themselves, right? In fact, we almost give them license to be immodest. Mm-hmm. But with our girls, there's so much emphasis on modesty and being demure and being shy. And an intelligent young Muslim woman will probably see the double standard in that. Mm-hmm. Did you find? Right? Did you find any differences in terms of how you were educating the young men as opposed to how you educated the young women?
Yeah, so usually with the men, I'm not the only one in the room. I have my husband with me usually to have like a male role model in the room, and that it's not just coming from me. And sometimes we even split up, so I'll just have the girls by myself, and then he'll just have the guys, because it makes a difference. And then even when I did my first study, it was only with Muslim girls, and they called me out on it like immediately, like, why are guys here? Why, why aren't there Muslim girls here? Because they need to hear what you're saying too. And I was like, yeah, I did the first study initially for only girls because you only had girl facilitators. So at that time, we branched off and, made it broader, but it's a huge need for them as well.
My other, I have a lot of, I'm very, very kind of interested in this work because I'm a resident scholar at ALIM, and no, because I have a 14-year-old daughter. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I do realize that, and we have had some conversations. I think my wife speaks to her much more candidly than I. I think that it's still, sometimes I think for a father, I'm speaking from a father's perspective, for a father, I think, it requires a certain comfort with the idea of your children, boys and girls, as sexual beings. Like, you don't want to even, it's almost like you're just clinging to those innocent, young kind of notions of your children that, of course, are very endearing to you. And some parents, cling to those notions too long and never have those conversations. What recommendations would you have for someone like me? I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I don't know that, marriage is in the immediate horizon, but I can tell that boys are beginning to be noticed, and, she's much more concerned about her appearance than she used to be, and things like that. What would your recommendation be? What would your advice be about like broaching that as a topic of conversation? How do I do that?
So first of all, get the notion out your mind that it is going to be one conversation, because we get this thing, like, we're going to have this talk. I'm going to have to talk with her, and then I'll be done. So it's an ongoing discussion. So I call them open and honest conversations. So it starts off with you really just taking advantage of teachable moments. So you identifying, for example, you're listening to, like, she listens to some music, and sometimes the lyrics can be a little sexual, and you just having a discussion about that. Like, what do you think what do you think he means by that? What do you think she means by that? Or let's have a discussion about it instead of just, don't listen to that, that's haram, da 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 da. It's like, instead of opening up a dialogue and having them think deeply about what they're listening to and how it's applying to them, and how it can have a deeper impact by you just taking the time and having a deeper conversation and open and honest and like a real conversation with your children about, different topics using teachable moments. Commercials, they have condom commercials now, having a discussion about that. They have kissing scenes in every movie usually. So having a discussion about that. And just having those little moments make a big difference. That's how.
Okay. That's how you would start. Keep going. Okay, so that's how you would start. Let me get my notepad out here, man. Make sure I don't miss any of this hikmah, any of this wisdom that you're dropping on me.
So I teach a course for parents. I'm gonna give you a bunch of pointers, but I teach a course called Halal Sex Talks, and that's basically that's what we talk about. We talk about how to have these open and honest discussions at different age groups. So all the way from 3 until they're 21, there's different age appropriate content that you should be exposing your child to. So for example, for the 3-year-olds, I call it 3 to 5, 3 to 7. I use a template. You know how the Prophet Muhammad said that when they're, oh my gosh, I don't like a brain fly. When they are,
he says, are you talking about the hadith about separating them in the bed?
No, I'm talking about the hadith. Play with them.
So play with them until the age of 7. Yes. Befriend them for 7 years. No, discipline them. Play with them until the age of 7. Discipline them for 7 years. Befriend them and then let them go.
Yes, absolutely. So from 3 to 7, you should focus on the ABCs. So I talk about teaching them the appropriate anatomical names for about their private parts. So they should know the actual names of their private parts. Because that will limit predators. A lot of predators, like sexual predators, and it's unfortunate that we have to talk about it, but it's a real thing that happens. So when they know that a child knows the proper names of, I have a penis and a vagina, and these are my breasts, instead of calling it something else. Whatever, my pee and stuff like that, it scares them. So they know that that this is my private part. And you're doing something wrong. So teaching them
very important point. Very important point. MashaAllah. Major key. MashaAllah, major key. And I think that's also, when parents think about these open and honest conversations, as you have, MashaAllah, very brilliantly termed them, it's not only about preparation, it's also about protection. So that, through greater self-awareness, like you say, knowing your private parts, I have a penis, I have a vagina, I have breast, this is my butt, etc. If somebody is touching you inappropriately or conversing with you inappropriately, asking you inappropriate questions. And if that space is open between you and your parents, I would assume you would feel much more comfortable saying, this person touched my penis in a way that you told me no one should be touching my body.
Absolutely. So we call it the body safety rules. So basically, it's, my body is my body. No one's allowed to touch my private part, see my private part, or play with my private part. Unfortunately, a lot of predators are creative. So they'll say things like, let's play a game, and I'm going to touch yours, you touch mine. Like that. So you have to let them know no one's allowed to play with it, touch it, kiss it, stuff like that. And then they'll let you know. And if someone breaks the rules, it's not your fault. So you just have to let them know and be clear that it's not your fault. Because a lot of times predators will say, it's your fault. No one's going to ever believe you. I'll kill you. I'll kill them. I'll hurt your parents if you say anything. So just say, I will believe you. And really assuring them that you're there for them if this were to happen. And a lot of times, sometimes it may not even be your child, but they may have a friend who shares it with them, and they don't really know, because a lot of times you don't have these discussions with your children. They know that something's wrong, but they don't know what they should do about it. So it's important that you have this open dialogue with them.
Wow. So you are currently working on your doctorate in human sexuality. Have you started writing your dissertation yet?
No.
Okay. Do you have any idea what you're going to write about?
Yeah, so I'm building a curriculum. Right now I'm focusing on my curriculum for So this is for youth. A youth curriculum between the ages of 11 to 21 was broken down to 3 different parts. And so now I'm building out the lessons and everything. So this curriculum could be used once it's evidence-based. So I want to build it and then test it. And then for my dissertation, talk about basically what I found when I tested it with like a pilot study.
Okay, okay. And the curriculum is for what age group?
So it's a curriculum broken down into 3 parts. So from 11 to 14, and then 15 to 18, and then 19 to 21. Those different age-appropriate content in those 3 levels.
Okay, okay, okay.
For like communities, so I want this curriculum to be taught in masjids, so Sunday schools, Islamic schools, even in public schools if they have a large Muslim population, because all infused with Quran and Sunnah. So it's not teaching it in a way that's shameful. So a lot of abstinence-based, not only abstinence, but abstinence-based curriculums are very fear-based and shameful and using like scare tactics and things like that. My stuff always is empowering and focus on helping them really hold on to their Islam and kind of and look and talk about sexuality in a way that empowers them through their religion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I find, I remember being a student at a madrasa, a traditional Islamic school, and I was having a conversation with one of my teachers and explaining that I wanted to get married, explaining that, it's good being here at the madrasa and studying and learning. But, I think I'd like to get married. And, of course, the teacher asked me why, like, what could be better than what we have here, which is, mashallah, he himself was a married man. But I think he thought about me as being kind of a young student. And I think his assumption was that I was preoccupied with, studying and memorizing and things like that. And when I told him, I said, for companionship, I feel like, I'm tired of being alone, man. Going through this by myself is difficult. And then he said to me, one day you'll get married. And like he was like laughing and, making kind of like grunting. and I said, Ya Maulana, are you talking about sex? And he was like, no, don't, like, almost like there was still like just like this was a forbidden word that is not to be mentioned in polite company. And so I worry that, Muslims being open to your curriculum, right? Masajid, mosque, Islamic schools, I worry that maybe this is too forward thinking for some of our community. I mean, our community still kind of operates on this, as long as I don't see it, it doesn't exist kind of basis. So even though sex is everywhere, it's in the music, it's on all of the devices, the telephone and the television and everything else, we still kind of have this discomfort talking about these things. What strategies have you used to kind of break through? Or do you find that this differs among different Muslim cultures? Because I find that in African-American Muslim communities, there's much more sex positivity and openness and transparency around talking about sex as opposed to some other Muslim communities.
So absolutely. I actually went through a lot of different Muslim cultures where they invited me, to the masjids and like, oh, come on, you got to do a talk. So I went to one. So I'll give you 2 examples. So one, I went to one African-American community in Philly, actually. And they were like, oh, you can say whatever you want. We gotta mute the mic. And you can go up there. You can say whatever you want. You got the floor. I know our children need this. I know they come to me and ask you different questions. So I know they need it. And then I'll have another imam in like Middle Eastern, something like a Daisy community. And they'll say, I know this is a problem because I've gotten some questions, but the elders, they don't want you to say, you can't say the word sex. They're like, you can do it, but you can't say the word sex. You can't say, certain words. So I'm like, how am I supposed to do this?
Oh, man.
So I'm trying to like, so like,
Oh my God.
words, and then like, the kids are looking at me, and then they had, so then they had some of the elders in the room. I think one of them was like a physician, so he's like, he wanted to talk, and it was just, it was just all over the place. So like, so what I do is I say, okay, well, I have different requirements. So I say I have to say the word sex. If you want me to do this workshop, I have to do different baseline rules that I have. But I can do an educational, workshop for the elders or for the board, and letting them know how serious this is, and how many Muslim youth are having sex before marriage, how many of them, or we don't have the statistics about STDs and stuff like that, but we do have some surveys in regards to how many of them are having sex before marriage, and it's a high rate, 2 out of 3, which is, very large. So they need to have.
Wait, hold on. Did you just say that statistics reveal that 2 out of 3 young Muslims are having sex before marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, 66%.
More than that. It's really scary. Yeah.
Really, 2 out of 3. That's why I would really I would like to see those statistics. 2 out of 3. SubhanAllah.
That statistic comes from the Muslim Family Youth Institute. Muslim Family Youth Institute. They a research institution. They do a lot of different surveys and things of that nature.
Wow. And so so basically looking at a statistic like that, sex education is something we can't afford to avoid, because it's here, it's happening. Another question that I had, what are some of the most common misconceptions that you found that young Muslims have about sex and sexual relationships?
It's either two extremes. Either they're like, this is not really a big deal, everyone's doing it, so why are you still talking about abstinence? Because in my university, the professors are looking at me like, this is never going to work. Like, this, no one does abstinence anymore. It's like, well, we value abstinence. Like, it's a beautiful thing. And I just have to be mindful. I just want to teach it the right way, because I feel like if it's taught the right way, if I can empower you, inshallah, then, you can hold close to this and value yourself and see what, Allah wants, He wants for you. He chose you to be Muslim. You can do this. So it's really about letting them believe that they can actually do it. Because sex education workshops in like public schools, they primarily focus on the physical harms of sex. And sex is not just physical. So having a deeper discussion about sex is not just physical, it's the emotional connection, and the psychological connection, it's the spiritual connection. And there's a reason why Allah wants it to be within marriage. How it's a beautiful thing. It could be a beautiful thing between you and your spouse and build you closer together, and you guys have a healthy, sex positive, pleasure type of experience, versus just doing it with any and everybody, and kind of just valuing that moment and valuing that experience. And even if you already, so 2 out of 3, so a lot of my Muslim youth already had sex. Now they're trying to change, so not putting them down and not wanting them to fall into despair. It's kind of like, okay, so now you can make Toba, you can ask Allah to help you, you can turn back around to Him, and inshallah you can overcome this. Like, you don't have to just because you had sex once doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. You can change. So teaching them ways on how to kind of navigate through the American society on how to change. Okay, so how do I stop having sex? How do I break up with someone who I love so much and kind of move on?
Wow, it's funny, man. I was just thinking about how so many parents are just oblivious to a statistic like that. And even if we hear a statistic like that, we think, oh my God, my son or daughter's 2 friends, they think it could never be my son or daughter. It's just, oh my God, you mean 2 of their friends are having sex before marriage? The other thing that I think is worth hearing from an expert about, who's in the field, on the ground, working with people, is I find that attitudes toward sex before marriage among young girls and among young boys are completely different. I find that, young women, their religious identity is much more connected to, like we said, their modesty and their abstinence. So that, some young girls that I've, met, just in my travels, doing youth work, talking to young Muslims, if they have experienced sex, a lot of them feel like they have no hope. There's no, I am officially a bad girl. I am damaged goods. And there is no value in my even attempting to be religious or to repent or to invest in my relationship with Allah. Whereas young men, I don't feel like, they deal with that in the same way. Have you also experienced that?
Yes, it's two different ways. So girls are more emotional. So a lot of times what happens, their story is they met a guy, they fall in love, they start, they're texting all the time, and they don't realize, they're kind of like, you know what, I got this. My email is strong enough that I can talk to this boy on Instagram, on social media, and then we can start texting and nothing's going to happen. So eventually they're texting every day, they're on the phone every day, they fall in love, and they kind of let their boundaries down, their guard down, and then before you know it, they're in this like full-blown sexual relationship. So it's like, but I love him, so it's nothing else. So I love him, and I love him so much. Eventually, we are going to get married. We're just, having sex right now. So it's so they try to find different loopholes. Like, well, can I still talk to him and not have sex with him? So we talk about how fragile our hearts are. We talk about how easy it is, when we love someone to let our guard down. And just because, right now you're in my workshop, you're like, I'm not having sex. I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to guard my modesty, inshallah, until I get married. And it's easy to fall back into that trap that Shaitan wants you to be in because you're alone with him, texting him privately, and that type of thing. With guys, it's more of a physical thing. And also, guys, believe it or not, are more pressured to have sex. So with their friends, sex thing must be gay. Like something's wrong with you if you don't have a girlfriend. And so I had conversation with some boys who are like, Dr. Shaakira, I really do want to stay a virgin. I really do want to wait until marriage. But what am I supposed to tell all my boys who are dogging me out because they know I'm not having sex? So we practice role playing in our classes on how to.
Wow, mashallah.
When they're caught in situations like that where they feel pressured in a public setting or at the basketball court or somewhere, and how to still look cool and be like, well, I'm a man, I'm waiting for my wife. I don't have time for these little girls out here. So stuff like that to really uplift themselves and still be a man without being like,
mashallah, man, that is really illuminating and very, I think, sensitive to the needs of young men. Because now, you didn't got me on like an autobiographical chord. Now, I actually remember as a 10, 11-year-old boy listening to older guys in my neighborhood talk about sex and women. And in the same way that, some people want to smoke cigarettes, or some people, these are signs of being precocious. These are signs of being mature, so that, if you can engage conversation, even if you're lying, right, you still feel like you're being accepted by older members of, the group. And that makes you feel good. So actually equipping young men with things to say, right? Because I think before you said that, I would have just said like, stay away from those people, or, just say I'm a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? Not recognizing that might really leave him a bit vulnerable to feeling uncool, unschooled, immature, right? So, mashallah, this is why we invite intelligent people on the Hangout. Not for everybody else, but for me to benefit. Mashallah. I think that's really important. Rolling right off of that question, do you find that people who attend your workshops that are already in sexual relationships, in the workshop wanting to kind of reframe or redefine their relationship with sex? Is it, how is the, because what I hear you saying is sex is not like the point of no return, right? It's not the point of no return. How often do you find that people, once they're given, a positive, good, solid education about their bodies and sex, maybe they say, you know what, I do want to do this in a way that's reflective of my values, my faith, pre-commitments, etc.
So just giving them tools on how to change. So we talk about, okay, so you're going to make it sober, you're going to ask Allah to forgive you, you're going to promise to not return back to it, inshallah. And then, so a lot of times teaching them how to break up with the person, because a lot of times it's like this one committed relationship. So breaking up with the person, understanding that it's not going to be easy, it is going to be difficult, that this is, your heart is attached to this person in some way, and that it is going to hurt you. But remembering that Allah is watching you, He sees, He knows the challenges you're going through, that you do love this person, that He created your body, you're hormonal, you want to have sex, so, and you're challenged, you're going through this struggle within your own self. He's going to honor you for that. He's going to bless you for that. He's going to bless you with someone way 10 times better than this person who you're talking to now. And sometimes it can be a Muslim couple. So now they're kind of like, well, we had sex, so now we just should get married. It's like, no, you should take a break. You should take a break. Break up. Don't talk to each other for a while, because I get those all the time. So don't talk to each other for a while. Let your, focus on yourself. Focus on rekindling your relationship with Allah. Praying 5 times a day, reading Quran, asking Allah to forgive you, and just really being the best you that you can be. And then after maybe 3 months, then try to start over. So you need to contact her wali. So we always talk about the value and the importance of the wali. So sometimes I have women and men who kind of like try to go behind the back door and sneak and talk privately, and then go back to the wali. And it's like, you're doing your own self, especially I empower my women. You're doing your own self a disservice, because Allah has honored you. He put you on this pedestal, saying that He can't even talk to you without going through your wali. So it's just like if you saw Beyonce on the street, you can't just go up to Beyonce. You have to go through her bodyguards. So you have to honor yourself and say that you can't even talk to me. Like, you're not.
Okay, I'm letting you know. I'm letting you know outright. I'm still in that. Just that little. That's definitely a little bit of game that I'm sprinkling on my daughter. Look, you see Beyonce on the street, you just can't go up to her and just talk to her. You got to get through the bodyguard. I'm the bodyguard.
Yes, like men know men. You gotta
right, yeah, for sure.
You're only doing yourself. Our hearts are really vulnerable. Our hearts are really easy. So Allah is trying to protect you. So
mashallah. I remember talking to an older non-Muslim relative of mine about this idea of a wali, this guardian, if you will. And I remember her saying that's a really beautiful idea. And that if I had more guidance from men in my family when I was coming up, I probably wouldn't have ended up in a lot of the toxic relationships that I did, but because, those relationships didn't happen like above board, and I was kind of left to my own devices to try and evaluate a man that I'm attracted to, that's saying all of the right things. And, I wasn't thinking about myself in the way that a father or an older brother or an uncle might have been thinking about me. And I wasn't evaluating this guy in the way that they might have evaluated him, right? So, trying to get, our sisters especially, young sisters especially, to see this not as something that's cramping your style, not as something, not as like, this guy is the guy that's going to, help you to become, a woman who never gets married or something like that. This guy's gonna prevent you from getting married ever. But this guy's here, what I'm saying? This guy is actually here to help you to serve this end, in a more effective way. I think that's very important. I think it's very important.
Because I was born and raised Muslim, mashallah. So I went through the experience when I got married with my father, and I felt like every guy, it was just something wrong, and it was like, oh my God. But we used to sit down, we used to have conversations and say, it's not about quantity is about quality. I don't care about how many guys come to me. It's about, I'm waiting for the right person. And I'm not just going to talk to anybody. So he would remind me of how valuable I was and how this person wasn't it. He was like, I'm not emotionally attached. I'm not looking at him the way you're looking at him.
Sure.
At you. No, he's like, I can see straight through that. So he would have a real conversation. And I would, and I'll tell the women all the time that when they're in this marriage prep type age and they're actually looking for a spouse, that they have these conversations with their wali and what they're looking for, different qualities they're looking for in a spouse, and not just being so superficial. And when their wali kind of says, I don't think this is not it, and kind of having a conversation with them, why do you think it's not it? Or what can we look for differently, so that they know that it's not, I'm just not trying to be mean. I'm just not trying to, I don't want, I do want you to get married, but I'm going to marry you to the right person, inshallah.
Mashallah. But I think, that conversation, it's like, in order for her to feel comfortable with her father playing such an active role in her pursuing a spouse, or a spouse pursuing her is probably a better way to term it, I think they have to have a certain basis of trust even before they get to that point. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? It's kind of like, we're talking about that, but that's probably the end point of a lot of trust that has been developed, over the course of her childhood, and also too, I mean, even though the Sharia recognizes that women deserve special protection, you would also hope to have relationships with your sons, with your young boys, that they would rely on the opinions of their mothers, fathers, family members concerning who the right person is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So moving to marriage, I mean, subhanallah, I remember, trying to get married, and, my wife's, wali, her dad, he had questions for me that were like, yo, man. It's like, what are you trying to do here, man? Hypothetical scenarios. And, one of the questions that I remember most was, he said, I'm not going to ask you how much money you make. I am going to ask you if you can take care of my daughter, right? But he said, from the money that you do make, give me almost like a pie chart in terms of how you spend that money, the percentages. And I said, at that time, probably 80% on clothes, and 10% on books, and 10% on food, or something like that. And he said, how do you expect that to change when you get married? Mm-hmm. It's like, man, these are good questions. Mm-hmm. Later on, my wife told me that she was on speakerphone as he was interviewing me, asking me these questions, and he was looking at her saying, are you listening to this? I was on speaker, rather. She wasn't speaking. He was just interviewing me and just letting her listen to my responses and giving her an opportunity to say, okay, what do you think about this? Mm-hmm. What do you think about this? Good, yay, nay? And I always thought that was a good approach. I mean, do you have any advice for young Muslim men, young Muslim women considering marriage in this time?
Well, the challenge, I think a lot of the challenges that a lot of the youth come to me with is trying to find someone and trying to find a space. So now they have social media, we have apps and all these different things. And they ask me about, is this okay? And it's like, it is okay, because we don't have a lot of different avenues, but it's just how you go about doing it. So your wali still should be involved in the process. So from the beginning. So a lot of times youth have this misconception that I only bring my wali in when I know that this is the person that I want.
The wali is the rubber stamp. This is already a done deal. We just need you to come in and just put the rubber stamp on it so we can go ahead and do it. Well, it's too late at that point, right?
Yeah. So from the beginning, it's like your wali needs to be involved. We're remembering that marriage is a form of worship, and that Allah put it this way for a reason. So you want Allah to bless the process. So blessing it from the very beginning in the premarital process. So that encourages them to say, all right, I'm going to have my wali from the beginning. That doesn't, and he's just kind of like you know, the bodyguard in the beginning, but also like a buffer system as you're getting to know each other. And you're just saying that I want to get to know this person to possibly marry. It's not saying that I'm going to, you know, that this is the final step. So from the, you know, including them from the beginning is, to me, the most important part in the premarital process, because it prevents so much. Because like I said, because the whole like falling in love and the emotional attachment can happen in the premarital phase. And now, you know, you're in this full-blown sexual relationship, and it's kind of like before you get married. So that happens a lot. So preventing that, I think the Wali definitely helps prevent that.
MashaAllah. So in terms of your field is like the halal sex purge. And by the way, you should trademark that. Yeah, you should definitely trademark that. That's got a ring to it. What are some of the most important issues pertaining to sex that a young couple should explore? Right? You know, so we got Zayd and we got Zainab, and they're considering each other for marriage. They're going through premarital counseling, and of course, they're talking about the dishes, who's gonna do the dishes, and who's cleaning the house, and what are we doing about money, and what are we doing with work. And I find that some Muslims say that in their whole premarital counseling, they never talk about sex. They talk about household chores, they talk about savings accounts, they talk about different forms of, you know, insurance, they talk about everything except sex. So what kind of issues should two people considering marriage discuss with regard to sex and sexual relationships?
So just agreeing to have healthy dialogue about it. So having a conversation and open communication about things that I like and things that you like, things that we want to try, things that we definitely don't want to try, things that interest us. Because if you hold
on, Dr. Shaakira. How could now if these are two Muslims, you know, straight laced, you know, made it all the way through unscathed. Let's say both of them are that third of the two of the three, right? How will they know any of that? Don't you think that would be a little presumptuous of either of them?
Well, some of them don't know, but some of them may have an idea. So like a guy may say, well, I would like you to dress up for me or something, you know, when I come home, I would like you, you know, to look cute. You're covered all day. I would like you to be uncovered and sexy for me when I come home. Sometimes, or, you know, or she can say different outfits she likes or different things that she wants to try. For example, we talk about oral sex. You can talk about different positions that you may have read about, or things that you want to try and things that you don't want to try. Even if they haven't had sex yet, they may have some type of sexual appetite. So do you feel like, you know, I want to have sex multiple times a day, 2 times a day, at least 3 times a week, and kind of setting different standards where it's not in stone, but different goals. We want to have a date night once a week, at least, you know, every other week, you know, different things like that. We try something new, different things that you can talk about in the premarital process, even if you are virgins. And a lot of times, so even when I talk about sexuality, especially in my courses with my parents, it's not just limited to marriage, prep, and sex. Sexuality is a huge, broad topic. So we talk about pornography, how that's a huge industry and how it affects a lot of our children. We talk about body positivity and how that can negatively affect self-esteem, and how a lot of our young women are negatively affected by, you know, social media and that type of thing, or how they perceive themselves, and how they what else do we talk about? We talk about menstruation. We talk about how to properly make a ghusl. We talk about teaching boys about menstruation as well. Fertility, the possibility of having a real conversation with your daughter. Yes, you want to have kids, but what if you don't? What if you're not fertile? I'm talking about fertility options, or if you were not to ever get pregnant. Relationships, healthy conversations, healthy communication skills. So it's very broad. So it's not just limited to like vaginal penetration. That's not all we talk about. So I just wanted to throw that out.
No, mashallah. That's excellent. And you know what I find, because you know, working as kind of a community servant, you know, you get pulled into all sorts of stuff that you're not qualified to do. That's just the reality, you know. So I find that say for instance, like, people come to me not for formal marital counseling because I'm not a trained counselor, but they might just be asking me, say, my background is in Islamic law, what are my rights and what are her rights? And so we're talking about this. And when I mention to men about, the right to accessing intimacy, it's like I have to mention as a caveat, and we're not talking about like, this is being mentioned as a right, but I don't want you to conclude from that like you can treat this woman as though she's a robot or though she doesn't have emotions, feelings. That's not why we're mentioning this as a right? So what do you cover kind of in your work teaching about emotional intelligence? Because, we're talking about sex, we're talking about the body, we're talking about marriage. In what way is kind of emotional intelligence and, emotional connectivity and, those aspects of a sexual relationship? I mean, does that factor into your practice at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And just recognizing how, when you're having sex with someone, you're sharing the most intimate part of your body with someone. So, you're unclothed, you're naked, you're sharing your entire body with this person, and how that requires you to, you as the other person, respect and honor that this person is sharing that with you, especially as your spouse. And you, number one, you kind of having confidence and security about your body, and you loving yourself. And that's what I mean by body positivity. And you loving yourself and how you look and who you are as a person, and now you're going to share it with someone else. So having that level of respect and that honor to recognize, that this is a serious thing, even though, because we being conditioned in Western society, seeing it all the time on TV and videos and songs and everything, that we can kind of get desensitized and thinking like, oh, it's just sex, when it's not, much deeper than that.
MashaAllah. No, I always reflect on the fact that, with marriage, two people that before that sacred bond, and of course Allah refers to it as a mithaq ghalid, like a covenant or a contract of grave importance, right? That before that, these people weren't even permitted to stare at each other, right? They should have been lowering their gaze. They weren't even permitted to stare at each other. So how then could sex ever be insignificant? How could it just be? How could it? And that's why I think the work you're doing is very important. And I think that this work has relevance not only to Muslim communities, but also non-Muslim communities. Mm-hmm. Because when we get desensitized to sex, we actually become less passionate. Mm-hmm. We have a less passionate relationship with the erotic and with the sexual, because it's everywhere. It's like nothing. Mm-hmm. But when you treat sex with great care, you can actually have a much more passionate relationship with sex itself. And that's actually a good argument for abstinence and why abstinence, is important,
So I've had this, not argument, but this discussion with a lot of my classmates, and a lot of them, because sexuality has really evolved over the years, and it's kind of like this identity. It's your body. You can do whatever you want with your body and share with whoever you want. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter your gender. It's yours. And it's kind of like using it in a way to empower them to kind of like, this is your body, so you can do whatever you want with it. And I challenge them, like, you're much more than just your private parts. You're much more than just having sex.
Mashallah, mashallah.
And they're like, you're just religious.
Yeah, right. I imagine, for them, and you have to realize too, I mean, this is, I think the coolest thing about you doing the work that you're doing at Widener is, for people in a Christian context, mm-hmm. They associate veiling with celibacy, because of course nuns wear habits and priests, wear robes. So to have, a muhajjaba woman doing a doctorate in human sexuality, that's probably just like an oxymoron to them. You're just a walking contradiction. Like, wait, hold on, what you know? Because I think many of them assume Muslim women to be sexually repressed, not allowed. Of course, we talk about like FGM and stuff like that. You know, almost not even allowed to experience sexual pleasure. And not saying that some of that doesn't have relevance in some, very toxic Muslim cultures that are in need of immediate reform, but it must be a paradigm shift for your colleagues to see you at the forefront of work like this.
Yeah, they tell me all the time that, I never thought I would talk to you because your presence intimidates me. And it's just like, and they say, well, you're really cool, but it took me a long time to be able to talk to you, because a lot of them are in the LGBTQIA community. So they're like, I grew up religious, so a lot of them have like a strong Christian background. When their families completely shunned them when they came out, or had this type of view. So that's another thing that we talk about, homosexuality, because it is in our Muslim community as well.
Sure it is.
So basically what I do is I caution parents that if you have, and I look at it as their test, and this is what Allah is testing them with, of them being attracted to the same sex, or having this view of how their gender, or whatever the case may be, and that's their internal struggle. Because I've had conversations with people who are struggling with this, and you can see that this is real for them.
Oh, for real? Yeah, this is not theoretical. This is not theoretical.
Struggle. Like, I was talking to one of my classmates who considered themselves as non-binary. So basically what that means is they don't consider themselves a male or a female. Okay. And they kind of just say that some days I feel more feminine, some days I feel more masculine, and they struggle. They wake up and they struggle with what type of deodorant they're gonna wear. And I was like, whoa, like I like that. So
no. From a Shaakira perspective, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please continue. No, please continue. I'm sorry. No, I insist.
So I lost what I was saying. So just seeing that, and just having these real conversations that this is, because they painted this picture that this is who you are, your identity of who you are based on your gender, and who you're sexually attracted to, your sexual identity. So kind of helping them see that, yes, this is real for you. This is what Allah is testing you with. And similar to someone who may have had, a heterosexual relationship, who may have a crush on someone, and challenging with not wanting to have sex with that person until marriage. This is your challenge, where you have this temptation. Are you going to act on this temptation? Or are you going to, let me help you navigate through it so that you can still, follow the teachings of what Allah wants you to do. And Allah knows, that He gave you this test for a reason. He knows that you can overcome it. And so helping them with different ways on how to not act on their desires. So we talk
about mashallah. Man, this is one of the coolest hangouts that we've ever done. Mashallah. No, I think of all the people that we've hosted, I mean, this is probably the hangout in which I learned the most. So, may Allah reward you, elevate you, reward your family. Be sure to thank your husband for allowing us to, monopolize your collective time for the hour that we have. We don't want to hold you much longer, but I did want to give you the final word to mention whatever you want about your work, or if you want to give advice, right? Adeen nasiha. The Prophet said, the faith is advice, sincere advice. I mean, if you want to give advice, if you want to tell people something to look out for in terms of things you're working on, you have the floor for the final word, inshallah.
Basically, I just want to say that the struggle is real. A lot of Muslim youth are really struggling with, practicing abstinence or delaying sex until marriage, homosexuality, and all these different things. And we have parents have to really be supportive, helping them through that, and not kind of just shunning them or throwing them away, and kind of kicking them out, because it's just like you're pushing them to the shaitan, and it's just like that's what shaitan wants. Like, his ultimate goal is not for them to have sex before marriage, or for them to be, homosexual, be gay or lesbian or anything like that. It's to, not believe. So when you push them, you shun them and you push them away from Islam, that's what ultimately happens. So still call them to pray, still invite them to different events, talk to them about Islam, about Allah and the love of Allah and the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for them to really connect that way. And inshallah, they will change. So just not giving up on your children is important. And then I would tell Muslim youth that, especially when they're feeling discouraged, like, oh, Islam is so hard, it has so many rules.
I've heard it all before.
And really reconnect them with the law on a deeper level, and really developing and cultivating that love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And kind of just putting the rules to the side for a second and just focusing on that, and then it'll become a lot easier. And just recognizing that Allah chose you to be Muslim. You're Muslim for a reason. Muslims do a lot of crazy things that people see. You know, we pray 5 times a day. We fast for 16 hours. You know, we go without water for that long amount of time. Is something that your body physically needs to survive. And I tell them all the time, if you can fast, you can do anything. Like you can do anything.
That's some good teaching. That's some good teaching, man.
So just, reminding them of the things that they're already doing, because they think that, everyone is telling them, whether it's their, teachers in schools, their friends, social media, everyone is saying that you have to have sex and it's the cool thing to do, and songs and everything. And it's just like, it's much deeper than that. So just reminding them of how amazing they already are and how Allah chose them to do this for a reason. He's not going to put a burden on He's not going to put a burden on you that you cannot bear. And you got this. Allah got you. He's going to help you through this. Really empowering them and just helping them see that for themselves is very, very, very valuable.
MashaAllah. And the last thing, what year did you attend the ALIM summer program?
Not this summer, the past summer. So 2019.
2019. Okay, I just want to tell everybody, you see the greatness that we attract. You see the level of talent. Okay, y'all see what this is. Okay, mashallah. Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal 'asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Subhana rabbi rabbil 'izzati 'amma yasifun wa salamun 'alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil 'alamin. MashaAllah. Salam alaikum. Give our best to everybody in Delaware, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
Wa alaikum salam.